Good afternoon, and welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman. My name is Brenda Perryman, and we're going to have a great show today, including an interview with Joyce Garrett, who is an advisor to President Obama, not Joyce Garrett, excuse me, Valerie Jarrett, who is an advisor to President Barack Obama, and she called from the White House, and we did an interview with her. And before I begin, I'm going to introduce you, or let them introduce themselves. We have a couple of guest co-hosts and one of our permanent co-hosts here. And so I will start with Mr. Darren Calhoun.
Good afternoon. My name is Darren Calhoun. I'm a supervisory investigator and program analyst from the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Detroit field office.
Ooh.
How do I follow that? I'm Chris Summerall, and I'm a servant for the citizens of the city of Detroit.
My name is Adam Ollier, and I'm the vice president of Hans Woodlands.
That's really interesting. It's the vice president of Hans
Woodlands.
Woodlands.
Mm-hmm.
Woodlands. I thought it was called Hans Farm.
Well, we're trying to rebrand a little bit. Farms makes you think more like we're growing corn or have pigs and things like that, but it's just trees. It's hardwood trees. So Woodlands is a little bit more accurate.
Oh, okay. There are a couple of great stories. You know, part of what we do at the beginning of the show, we take something from On This Day in African American Life in Detroit by Ken Coleman, one of our co-hosts. And on this day, March 14th, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. offers a speech titled The Other America at Grosse Pointe High School. He is hounded and heckled by Breakthrough, a Detroit right-wing group opposed to open housing and the peace movement. The speech lays out the inequities in public education between blacks and whites. The civil rights leader will later speak at Central United Methodist Church, which is downtown. It will be King's last visit to the metro area. He will be assassinated 3 weeks later. Isn't it funny how we're still talking about equality in education, still talking about it this many years later? And lastly, just another note, in 1999, Curtis Jones joins the Ancestors. He was 50. Jones was a boys basketball sensation at Northwestern High School, graduating in 1968. The National Basketball Association superstar George Gervin, an Eastern High School graduate, once called Jones the greatest player ever seen. In 1982, Jones filed a lawsuit for $15 million, arguing that he couldn't read but was pushed into North Idaho Junior College to exploit his basketball talent and further his defendants' careers. Defendants are University of Michigan head coach Johnny Orr, Northwestern High School basketball coach Fred Snowden, and North Idaho Junior College officials. Jones, who has been in and out of mental hospitals, did not prevail in the lawsuit. I remember that. But it did start opening the eyes that, you know, so many of these players were getting pushed through college just because of their prowess, you know, and that's unfortunate. And now, I don't think it's that much better. It's a little better, but not that much better. And since we're talking about it, what do you all think about college education and basketball and football right now? Do you think that they're kind of still pushing some of these students?
Well, I think that any time that you have big business that's tied to education, there's going to be some exploitation. And I think that maybe it was a little bit more out in the open or blatant back then, but I definitely think it still exists today. You know, even down to the high school level, and maybe even younger, we can see that these student athletes receive a certain type of treatment, you know, almost conditioning them to not take education as seriously sometimes as they should.
Well, I played college football, and I think one of the discussions we don't have enough is that we really do make sports very different than than other items. So if I played in the band, if I had musical ability, or if I was a singer or a dancer, I could go and do that, and I don't need school. But to be a successful athlete, you have to graduate from high school at a minimum. And to play football, you have to go to college. You know, so it's a very different thing when you say, am I pushing this kid through or are we educating them? Nobody said, were we pushing Michael Jackson through school so that he could perform? Because he didn't have to go to school. He just didn't do that. You know, the same thing you see with all the child actors. But if you're an athlete, you have to go to school and you have to become a student athlete, and no other talent requires that. So when you talk about not educating them, that's the thing that we aren't doing. We aren't educating folks. And it just happens to be that it came to the head because they were a great athlete.
And at some point, and I agree with you, but at some point, you know, these young people are in school. So you would want to think that they would take advantage of the opportunity that they have while they're there. I know there are a lot of times they push them through, and it still goes on today because there are magazines out right now for 5th graders and 6th graders to join AAU teams, and they rank these children based on their athletic prowess. So, but you would hope that there's a parent saying, you're there, you're in school, get an education.
Well, a lot of times some parents don't even care if their kid finishes college either, because they're banking on this child making it to a pro basketball league. I know that. I've seen it. And I, have a son who played college basketball and everything, and my whole thing was I wanted him to graduate. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand you have some players who are really so-called great players, and they probably can leap right out of college and into the pros, and some do, but the majority don't.
Right.
And I know of a lot of high school or college players who played 4 years and never got their degree.
I think that brings us to the discussion about folks actually graduating. I mean, when you look
Right.
at the achievement gap, when you look at how many young folks are graduating from high school in the city of Detroit, and then how many of them matriculate on to college, and then how many of those graduate from college. So we only look at it when it comes to athletes, but this is something that's happening with everybody. We aren't educating kids, they aren't graduating, they aren't matriculating, and at every juncture, more and more people, lose.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that it becomes a bigger story because there are people that are profiting off of these students.
They profit,
And
exactly.
if you just have a body of students that don't graduate for whatever reason, there isn't this machine that's capitalizing and creating billion-dollar industry off of these student athletes. And I think that that's where people's conscience are, it's kind of stinging them a little bit because they're saying somebody's getting rich off these kids, and these kids should at least be prepared, very minimally by receiving the education that they thought they would get.
That's just for the athlete, though.
Yeah.
What about the other group of kids that are not athletes that don't get an opportunity to graduate and don't keep on going? What's going on with those? I think that's what you were saying.
Absolutely.
What's going on with those children, but then you think, what's the other industry that's being made for them, that's being built in every city and every town, is the prison system. And that's the pipeline. If you're not going into school, then you got to go somewhere.
Right.
and
Well,
that's
what's
what it
so
pushed to.
unfortunate sometimes too is the parents don't really investigate the schools that their children are in.
But I don't think that they should. I don't think they should have to, is what I mean.
Well,
Be
but they
great
don't.
schools everywhere.
Right at this juncture, they should.
But the point is, public education in this nation, in this state, and in our city should not be designed about whether or not
Where the
you're a
school
good
is.
parent.
Right.
Because if it is, there's no point in doing it. Public education should be designed as if you're a horrible parent and I'm a horrible parent, and we're all not going to do a good job with our kids. So that the system says, from a baseline, if you come into school every day and you spend your 8 or 9 hours in class, you're going to know how to balance your checkbook. You're going to have the skills to read, write, and do everything you need to do to be a successful
You could
non-criminal.
depend on us. I mean, I'm a teacher. You could depend on us to educate your child.
Yeah, 'cause-
But it's not like that right now, and it should become like that. I have an issue about some school systems saying we're doing parenting classes. I guess that's what they have to do, but what happened? How did we fall off like that? We have Tom on the line. Good afternoon, Tom.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good
Good afternoon.
I don't know. I mean, because I'm just going to go ahead and jump into this thing on the education post high school. And I heard one of them said, "Well, we're not educating, we're not graduating kids after high school." That, in a manner of speaking, is an adult decision. I remember when I graduated. I went to Detroit Cathedral, graduated in 1966, and it was kind of like, not that my mother and father were riding me in high school, But, it was kind of like when I won a football scholarship to Wayne, and it was kind of like they backed off and says, okay, this is yours. You're the one that's going to have to pursue this. And I did. I did not come out in 4 years, but guess what? I came out about a year or so later, and I had a piece of paper in my hand. And I think that in terms of that scenario there, and just not with me, but it's up to that individual, that goes there. Like I said, I won a scholarship to play ball. So in essence, I got paid to come down. I didn't get paid the kind of money I would have liked to have, mind you. But, my mother and father didn't have to come out of my pocket. I didn't have to come out of my pocket. And, so it's incumbent upon that person to continue to pursue, their education until the end. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to go. And education is the most important investment that we will ever make.
Right. Go on, Tom. Oh, we're going to put you on hold, and we'll come right back.
And thank you, Tom, for your comment. But I respectfully.
We'll come right back. Tom, push it. He said push it.
I respectfully think Tom is speaking from an idealistic perspective, meaning that once a kid graduates high school, that all of a sudden now he's an adult. That's not true. We're still dealing with, in some instances, very, very young mind, and so they don't necessarily appreciate the value of education like they should at that time. And so it's important that pressure still be levied on them to continue to push forward, because you don't get some things a little bit until later on in life. And so to say, well, that's an adult decision once you enter into college.
Perhaps his parents prepared him for that.
It sounds like
ideally,
it
that's what I'm saying.
Like
From an idealistic standpoint,
Tom?
that's true.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
But, in terms of my parents, like I said, through elementary school and through high school, they watched me. They weren't writing me, okay? But, like, once I got my scholarship and I'd made my commitment to go down to Wayne, and my father was my biggest fan. I mean, this man, all through high school, he came after working in Gear and Axle, would come out to Jane Field and watch me and the rest of the guys practice football. But, but in terms of an adult decision, and I'm going to agree with you, sir, in the middle, who took objection to me saying that it's an adult decision. No, at 17 and 18 years old, by law, yeah, you're an adult. But mind-wise, I mean, okay, come on, let's go ahead and get real. Whatever an adult is, okay, I'm 67, and I mean, I think I qualify as being an adult. But, and some kids, they have to have that hands-on kind of thing with them to, kind of like push them through to make sure that, they get that degree. Because, I mean, in this day and age, if you are not qualified, I mean, the days of back when I was a kid, I had friends of mine had papers fixed. They went into Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. They
Right.
worked 30 years. They weren't 50 years old, and they were retired. But, in terms of that, having a lot of brawn, and then I don't mean to be condescending or to besmirch anybody, and not a whole lot of brain upstairs, that is over. It's been over for a long time because, things are really technologically advanced, and if we don't have, I'm kind of going on another track here, but, in terms of the city's comeback, there was an article, it was in Sunday's paper on page, or whatever it was written by Mike Duggan and the woman who's with, I can't recall her name. Tanya Allen, that's who it was. And they said if Detroit's comeback is to happen, that young African Americans will need to be part of it, and they are the key to it. But guess what? If they do not go out and prepare themselves for the jobs of the 21st century, guess what? The Detroit's turnaround or comeback, it's going to happen without them. I've taken up enough of your time, and I'm...
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. The thing is that a lot of these children, and we weren't even supposed to be discussing this, but this is important, they're in a certain environment, and if your environment doesn't endorse education, that becomes another fight, because I've had students have to fight sometime to come to school and not have to stay home and babysit for their little sister or brother, The parent, and with Tom, and probably with my mother and a bunch of you guys, parents, there were expectations. you know, they didn't have to ride you because they knew, well, I was scared to do so bad in school. I had to do good, you know. But I don't know. I just think we just have to, and what Adam said, the schools should be able to handle it. Our educational system right now is like 30-something in the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the other thing that we don't spend enough time talking about, and I think it's a generational thing, is the difference in education. I mean, Tom said he graduated and went to Wayne State on a scholarship. Okay, but if he hadn't, he could afford to pay for college. I couldn't today. My salary today is not anywhere near enough to have paid for my tuition in undergrad. You know, a lot of folks say, oh, well, you can work the summer, and like my dad worked at the GM Proving Grounds over the summer and paid for tuition at Eastern. My $65,000 a year tuition at Cornell, I couldn't pay for it today.
Right.
You know,
right.
and so as we say to young folks, and we say to folks, well, you need to go get that education, and they absolutely do, because the numbers say that your earning potential is doubled with the bachelor's, it's tripled with the master's, and with the doctorate, you know, and so on and so forth. But the problem is, in the near term, you don't see those returns because you're thinking, oh, I'm going to graduate with that $28,000 in debt. That is the statewide average.
Right.
And that means that it's going to take you almost 10 years to be equal to somebody who just went to high school. And that's not something that's going to pay off for people.
And if you don't go to college, they say get some kind of training, at least something that you can do. You have to, or learn a trade, something you could become an entrepreneur. There are people who are entrepreneurs who do not. I know one I'm thinking about right now. She did not have a college education, but she learned as much as she could, and she went on with her passion. She's doing very, very well.
I'm sorry, and I agree with you. Right now, the access to information, the access to education, that there are ways that people can get better access. In '66, you couldn't pull up a tablet and say, well, let me read all these periodicals.
Right.
I'd have to go to the store and buy however many papers. But because there's so much access to information, getting back to what we were talking about, I think they're pushing these kids in ways that we all have to get this next LeBron James. His mom was a single mom, and I don't know how he was raised, but we know he was pushed toward the NBA. Thank God it worked out for him.
Right.
But how many LeBron Johnsons are in the street that can't play
Right.
at the level of basketball and get put on ESPN from Akron, Ohio, to play against Texas? I mean,
Or somebody who's going to go, I was getting ready to say Star Search, but American Idol.
American
They're
Idol,
going to
right.
become this singing star. Just so happens the young lady from the school where I used to teach, she's in the top 10 right now.
Yes,
But
amazing.
yeah, that's
Well, you
pretty
better give her
cool.
a shout out so she can get her votes in.
Malaya, yeah,
Malaya.
vote for Malaya.
Number 2.
Yeah, vote for Malaya. She's, if I was still teaching, she'd be in my musicals. She was in the department. But yes, it's very important. We have Theo on the line. Good afternoon, Theo.
Well, happy Friday to all of you.
Friday to you
I
too.
wanted to join in on this conversation. This is such an important issue to us as a people and to us as a country. It seems to me that our educational system is being enhanced so that the students will be dumped into the pipeline to prison. Now, talking about here in the city of Detroit, I just heard yesterday that there is a buyout offer because they're trying to get rid of the best and the seasoned teachers in order to hire, I guess, this Teach America group and folks along that line for minimum wage, shall we say. Now, the concern that I have about the system is the elimination of the vocational classes. And I'm
Right,
particularly
right.
sensitive to that
Right.
Benjamin Davis Aerospace, where the graduates at 18 had the ability to earn between $60,000 and $90,000 as an airplane mechanic. They got rid of that, moved the students over to Go Lightly because Go Lightly didn't have all of its paperwork in order. But anyway, to have vocational classes removed eliminates options. Our young people many times don't even have an idea of what they want to do or what they want to be. But when they're exposed to vocational classes, sometimes the light comes on, oh, I want to have a business selling this, or I want to work for that. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes these children find what they like. We had classes that, we had the vote classes, the auto mechanic shop and all of that stuff, but we even had a restaurant where students learned to prepare food. They learned to wait tables, they did management, they did all of these things. Not to say they were going to do that afterwards, but then that might be, something that they would want to go into.
Absolutely.
Well, I was going to say,
And sometimes the excitement that they show when they learn about the kinds of things that are available. There are parents who will expose their children to options, but there may not be many who do that. But in the schools, when they had those vocational classes, our young people got an idea as to what was going on in the world.
That's kind of what Adam was saying, that the schools should be something that we could go to and say, well, we're going to take care of you.
Everything. Wraparound services. I mean, my dad went to Northwestern. He had wood shop, metal shop, print shop before he started high school. So when you look around at all these vacant and abandoned neighborhoods and homes in your generation, that wouldn't happen because Chris or I could walk into that house and say, if I can get in, I can fix everything in here. And if I can't, Chris is a plumber and I'm an electrician and Darren's a carpenter, and so we had the skills in the neighborhood to fix a house. Today, you just don't have that. So you got to pay somebody to do something, and you can't afford to do that.
Right.
and,
So they
and
even
even,
start your own company. A lot of our young people get excited about that. And you have, like, I'm sure you know, Brenda, when you had students in your classes and your programs and your plays, you could see the ones that got excited about it and wanted to make it their life's career.
Yeah, I mean, you give them, they have that training and they get the courage to kind of venture off and do those things.
and I think that,
Chris?
I was going to say, I think that even before the training, a
Absolutely.
good thing that Ms. Theo touched on,
I know there was conversation.
that she touched on, was exposure.
Right.
And if you look at the generation gap as far as exposure from even 30 years ago, what was in the community, what kids walking down the street would see versus what they walk down the street and see today. We talked about being a cook. Now only restaurants they see in the neighborhood are Coney Islands. They see Coney Islands, they see party stores and, barbershops and beauty salons. And all of these things aren't really much to strive for. And so I think that exposure really needs to be one of the first conversations as far as students. I can remember, in elementary school taking field trips and getting exposed to a lot of different stuff that wasn't in my community. And frankly, 30 years ago, there was a lot more in the heart of Detroit than there is now. And so there was a need then, but there's even more of a need now to expose kids that, a restaurant is not a Coney Island, and that a handyman is not necessarily a master carpenter. And so you need to open the eyes of these kids, and part of that is going and talking to kids. If you have any type of success in your field, you don't have to have a PhD to go in and volunteer to talk to these kids, because I know pipe fitters, plumbers, carpenters who are making six figures, and I know people with far less academia making less. And so they need to know that there are other options, with regard to having a successful future.
Right. Well, thank you, Theo.
No longer have children in 12, but
Theo?
we do care about the community, have to continue to fight for them.
Right, right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank
Okay,
you.
have a
Thank
good
you.
one. Now we're going to go quickly to the international and national news. I mean, this was such a great conversation. We could talk on that for days, and everybody had great views on that. And the fact that the schools are not offering what they need to offer, and it just seems to be getting less and less and less. I don't understand. I just don't understand, especially in the urban areas right now. Well, let me ask this question before how do you think we can make it better?
I think you get what you pay for. So, and it's not
Put
just,
your money where-
and it's not
exactly.
just put your money. It's your time, it's your effort, and it's your children.
Right.
A lot of folks will say, "Oh, I want public schools, and I want public schools to be great," but they're unwilling to put their kids into that school. My wife and I had this discussion when we were thinking about where we're going to live. And I live 3 blocks from my parents. My wife and I both went to public schools. We both went to Ivy League schools. But for us, we want our kids to be able to go to public schools and the schools we went to. And that's what makes schools good, is that you send your kids back to your neighborhood. You live in your neighborhood, and you give them the benefit of your successes and your failures.
And it was so interesting when I taught in Highland Park, because I taught in Highland Park for 18 years, and I was teaching the children of students I had. You know, everybody wanted them to come through, and it's funny, when I went on to work in Southfield, there were Highland Parkers who came there, so you got to take Miss Perry. I was doing generations of students, but the parents knew they could rely on certain teachers to give their children a good education. And that's important. And some parents make the mistake of moving their kid from this school to this school to this school. I understand if this school isn't good, move them, but sometimes you got to come into the schools and get what you come in, volunteer. Let's see what's happening. Let me get in here, because I know I was a parent that really got into the schools when my kids were going into it.
Could I just add one thing that I think is a caveat we don't talk about? It's not just when you have kids in school, because then it's too late. I'm not going to take any chances with that school with my kid. I've got to fix the school before I have kids. So if Chris is saying, all right, we're going to have kids in 5 years, then we need to send our kids to the same school, and we need to go identify that school and say, how do we fix the problems in this school so in 5 years I can convince my child, I can convince my wife that we're not taking a risk.
That's right.
You got to fix it before.
That's true. What were you
Well, yeah, I agree with you. But if you don't have kids, you wouldn't know that the school is not bad because school is not good because you're not in there. But it's what I most agree with you on is it's the sense of community. And for a number of years, we've lost that sense of community because I'm chasing either this house or I'm chasing whatever it is that I'm chasing out of the community, out of the city of Detroit, or out of those areas where I couldn't walk down the street and get into trouble with because I knew Miss Smith and I knew Mr. Ellis and I knew Miss Anderson would get to me.
Right.
Well, we've lost that. I can no longer talk to this person's kid. This kid doesn't have the respect to talk to someone, to an adult, saying,
Right.
My mama tell me, no.
Our neighbors used to chastise me.
Exactly, and
they
then
they told on me, and
right, and then
I
you get home
actually
and
got
get
in trouble.
chastised for being chastised, not for the event, but for being chastised by somebody else.
Right.
So, we've lost that sense of community, and that's where.
I think that there's several layers to it too, because if you look at our schools now, they remind you of prisons. There's a sense of keep us out and keep you students in, and there needs to be more of a dialogue, more of an interaction, because this is a community. These kids honestly feel like school is jail. They're like, I'm going to serve 8. Not 8 years, but 8 hours. And so there needs to be, and I understand the dynamic of making sure the kids are safe. And things, but I think that it would be interesting to see if there can be some type of conduit of resource, whether it's talent, financial resource, or time, between surrounding businesses, and if they'd be open to it.
But it's all in what the administration and the staff make of that school. That school could be boarded up and have one window in it, but if you make that community inside that school something that the kids want to come to school for, there was a young lady here this morning. She was telling Michelle that she took my class all 4 years because I had the kind of class you could take year after year, because made her want to come to school. And we have to have a school environment where our children want to come to school, where they enjoy school. And when kids are trudging along to go to school, that could be a potential dropout.
And it's obviously pointing to something bigger than that school, but we want to make these kids self-sufficient. We don't want to make them dependent on a teacher, a class, or a school, so that when they leave that school, now they don't have that backbone, and they're like, man, if I was only back in such and such's class, then I'd be okay. We want to let them know that there's a big world out there, and yeah, I know you're going to love Miss Perriman's class, but you're going to have to leave. And,
but it's funny because I have students who graduated 35 years ago still calling me. So, but I've made myself available like that. But let's go on to our next, that's such a strong topic. We need to have a panel on that. Flight 70, I hear they haven't found it yet. Any theories about what went on?
I think the theories have been exhausted, whether it's national media coverage or even just social media coverage. I think that what's maybe lost in there is that there are families out there who are looking for their loved ones, and
Right.
and it really doesn't make sense in this day and age of the technological advances that there can't be any type of conclusive answer that's given. And so my heart goes out to them, and I'm still curious as far as what really happened. It just makes it really suspicious, and I think that the times that we live in and the way that people look at governments and potential devious or cover up, it only lends people to even raise their eyebrow even more, saying no, something's fishy.
Just one ping. That's all it takes is one ping, I think. And we were talking about this earlier, how I lost my iPhone, and I hit my one app on my phone, and it started sending this ping out, ping, ping, ping. Just sends it out, and I can find it. We're talking about an aircraft. We're talking about something that's a city block long with hundreds of people, or at least 100 people on it, and they can't find it. Without being an aviator or anything, I just think there's something nefarious about it. I think if you can turn off that transponder, that signal that it sends out after 9/11, and you can manually turn that off, I think that's a huge problem. I think that's something that should have been taken care of, years ago, 10 years ago, 13 years ago. You should not be able to turn off the button or hit a button to say this, you can't
The
see this
locator
plane.
button.
The locator, you just shouldn't be that. Even if you did manually turn it off, it would seem to me that, okay, there's now there's now some ping that will come out that we can locate that, because if it's headed towards this neighborhood or this city or this Capitol building, we should be able to do that.
The discrepancy in the reports, Malaysian governments or officials saying one thing, the U.S. saying another thing, I think that only leads to people even having even a more skeptical view of what they're getting reported as far as the whereabouts or the lack thereof of this airline. And we'll see how it plays out. I honestly think that as much time has went on now, that this will eventually just quietly die off. And it's unfortunate, but it raises some interesting questions, like you said, with regard to, because we live in a global world now. It's not like we don't fly to other countries and interact, globally. And so I want to make sure that if I'm flying on a Malaysian airline, that I'm just as accounted for as if I was flying on. I fly on Spirit because of the way my bank account is set up. But American Airlines is
I agree.
I can't go on Spirit. My knees hit the backs of those seats.
Well, you're in first class anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, anyway, very importantly, before we show in 5 minutes, we're going to show part of the other interview. The Civil Rights Act turns 50 this year. Darren, can you speak to that?
50. I mean, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the landmark legislation in this country. I mean, in the commission, we call it a majestic piece of legislation, because what it did, it said that race, color, religion, national origin, and gender had no place in the decisions that you make for employment, for housing, and for education. That's the legislation of the land. I'm sure people are throwing things at the television now saying, yeah, but this person did this. This person called me this name. This person used the N-word at work. The legislation is there, so that shouldn't happen. So the legislation is fine. It's the attitude, and that's what keeps our doors open, is that it's an attitude of fear. And once we change that, but this legislation 50 years ago, would this pass today?
No.
Exactly.
Right.
You
Right.
imagine
Right.
what was
Correct.
going on then with something like, could this pass? And then that's why it's such a majestic bill. That's why this was such a majestic bill, because without that, how many opportunities would you have the opportunity to have your show now, to be a teacher then? I mean, it's just so many things that came out of that Civil
That
Rights
was
Act.
just such a crazy day when that happened. I remember the day, and well, I was on the bus going to South Carolina, so I remember that day and going to South Carolina and noticing the stools being taken up from the restaurants and so forth and so on. But like you said, would it pass today? I don't think it
I don't
would
think it could.
either.
I don't think it could. But
Why do you say that? Let's say that. Why do you say that? And
well,
then you tell.
this is the most advanced country in the world. I mean, we have all of the technological advances. We have all the automobile, every advance in the world, but we can't get our own people health care. We can't make sure that we have how many millions of people that are homeless, but we're the richest country in the world. We have how many people go hungry every day, but we're the richest country in the world. We can't seem to solve those problems. We can't even get we can't even get a judge passed because the Congress and because this I want to make sure this president looks bad. So I'm not going to whatever it is, I'm not going to vote for it.
Adam, why did you say that?
I don't think we're committed to doing things. I think I'm committed to doing something. I think Chris is committed to doing something. Darren's committed to doing something. You're committed to doing something. I think the generational difference is that people today believe that they can be successful by themselves. And to some extent, I think that has proven true. When you talk about a LeBron James is successful himself. When you talk about people who are making it today, it's that sudden stroke of genius or that innovation or I was better than everybody else my entire life or I got lucky. But it wasn't I don't think you see enough folks who recognize that the reason that they are successful or not successful is the cast around them. You know, today you can win a championship by yourself because everybody's playing by themselves. You know, 50 years ago, you could only win a championship if everybody on the team was better than everybody else on everybody else's team. And I think that has been the big change. And if we're going to tackle some of these big issues, we've got to come together. I mean, we came together in an incredible way for the president to get elected.
Yes.
But every year since then and every year in
It has
between,
fallen
we
off.
said no dice.
Right, absolutely. Now, Adam, I know that you'll have to run, but we're going to get ready. I'm going to introduce our piece that our special interview with Valerie Jarrett, Senior Advisor to the President of the United States and Assistant to the President for Public Liaison and Intergovernmental Affairs in the Obama administration. That sounds like a job you may have, Adam, one day. You know, what do you think?
You never know.
So I want to thank you for joining us, and you have to come back and talk about Hans
Woodlands. Anytime.
Hans Woodland. So I'll make that appointment. We'll make that appointment. So if Mr. Tyler is ready, or when this is an interview about the Affordable Care Act, and everyone, please listen to it. It's just a few minutes, and we'll be right back with you. Good afternoon, everybody. Good day to you. This is Brenda Perryman bringing you a special feature right here at WHPR, where on the line I have the advisor to the president, Miss Valerie Jarrett. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Brenda. I'm delighted to be with you. How are you today?
Oh, fine. We had about 10 inches of snow, so.
Again? Oh,
Yeah,
my gosh.
it was
Aren't
like-
you just getting sick of it?
Oh, it has worn us out. But
It is time for winter to be over.
But anything we could do to help with the Affordable Care Act and with the Moms Knows Best program.
Well, I don't know about you. I'm a mom, and I have to think that I know best. That's what I've been telling my daughter for her whole life. And
Right, I'm
we
a
all
mom.
know that
I'm a mom,
young
too.
people listen to their mothers, they trust their mothers, and they know that their mothers have their best interest at heart. And so
Yes.
you're right. This week we've launched Mom Knows Best, and we have moms all over the country talking to their children and their family members saying, this is a wonderful opportunity for those of you who do not have health insurance, many for the first time, to get health insurance by signing up by March 31st. And you can go on our website, healthcare.gov. It's working fine. No wait. Go on there, or else you can dial 1-800-318-2596. That's 1-800-318-2596. Look at the options that are available for you for health insurance in your marketplace and pick the one that works best for you. And don't wait until March 31st. Sign up today.
Well, I've already had a young lady from here on a couple of weeks ago, and that's all we talked about was the Affordable Care Act and some of the workshops and everything that were available in this area. And I know in the Detroit area there's some other ones that are coming up. I'm not sure when they are.
Yes, actually, this Saturday, March 15th, at the American Indian Health and Family Services Center, which is at 4880 Lawndale Street in Detroit. You can go in. They're going to have a whole enrollment event. You'll be able to sign up on the spot and take advantage of it. But also, you can, if you don't feel like coming out, you can go to the website or you can use the phone number. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible so that everybody has the peace of mind of knowing that if they do get sick or they are in an accident, that they're covered. And we know that bad things happen to good people. You just never know when life is going to throw you a curveball. So take the time to protect yourself. Most people can get it for cheaper than a cell phone bill. And certainly, if you can pay for your cell phone, you can pay to insure your body.
Absolutely, because like you said, life happens sometimes. And a couple of months ago, a friend of mine was involved in a car accident. He didn't have insurance. And so it was almost secondary the way they treated him at the hospital.
Really?
Yes, and you need to have insurance. And the thing about it is he was going to sign up in December, and unfortunately he passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, that's awful.
Yes, it is. But I just watched how they treated him at the hospital, and I just think, the whole thing with having health care, it just really is so important.
It is so important, and we need people to go and get used to getting regular checkups on an annual basis. Don't wait until you have a symptom that's so acute that you go to the emergency room. Go in and get that important preventive care, and particularly to the women, the moms out there. Now, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, you can have your annual checkup for screenings for cancer, and you can get contraception without any copay whatsoever. And oftentimes, moms, we put ourselves last, and we take care of our children and our spouses and our parents and our grandparents, and then if there's any money left over, then maybe we'll take care of ourselves. But now you don't have to worry about any out-of-pocket expenses that comes with the standard package under the Affordable Care Act.
Because after the age of 26, doesn't the young person come off of their parents' insurance?
They do. Now, we extended it up till 26 under the Affordable Care Act, but at 26, when you turn 26, young people do have to leave their parents' plans, and so now, anticipating that, shop and find the insurance that's going to be available to you so that there isn't any gap. I mean, something can happen in one day. We get so many letters from people here at the White House where they've written in and they've said, I signed up for insurance on December 29th, and don't you know, by January 3rd, I had this acute pain, and then it was covered, and now I'm being treated. And if it hadn't been for the insurance, I would have either had to sell my home to pay for the cost of the treatment,
right,
or I wouldn't have gone to the hospital at all, and then who knows what might have happened to me.
And pre-existing ailments are covered too, right?
Yes, pre-existing, and this is a really important point. I'm so glad that you mentioned this, Brenda, because historically, insurance companies could discriminate against people, drop their coverage, charge them higher premiums. All kinds of things could happen to you if you had, and it could be anything from asthma or something more severe, high blood pressure, cancer. Insurance companies, it was at their discretion to determine what they considered a pre-existing condition. And so just when you need the insurance the most, the insurance company would say, no, you're not going to be covered. And so people would often stay in a job that they didn't want because they knew they couldn't change employers because the new insurance company wouldn't give them coverage. And so now if you wanted to go and start your own business or change jobs or whatever, you have the flexibility of knowing that insurance companies may no longer discriminate against anybody. It's a huge benefit.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate you coming on and telling Detroit and Michigan about the Affordable Care Act. And moms, we have to get out there. We have to talk to our children.
We do, and you know what? I would even go so far as to say it's okay to nag them a little about this. Because these young people, they think they're invincible, and they're not. And if you just stay on them every single day until March 31st, I know you will get your children signed up. And there's no better gift that an adult child can give their parent than the peace of mind of knowing that their parent doesn't have to worry about them if something happens, that they'll have that important medical treatment, affordable quality medical treatment that's provided under the Affordable Care Act.
I'd quickly like to say anyone who has heard some misinformation about it, go to the workshops. Call, what's that number again, Valerie?
The number is 1-800-318-2596.
And you find out, or you could go on White House. Wait,
WhiteHouse.gov, healthcare.gov.
Healthcare. I was going to say WhiteHouse.gov.
That's fine. No, it's healthcare.gov, and every state will have insurance plans that are available in your marketplace that you could. And it's so easy. I mean, you just go on and take your time and pick out what works best for you. And that's another reason to go on today, because it might take you. You might want to think about it. Well, there are 5 choices, let's say, in your area. Well, I want to think about which one's best for me, and I'll call back tomorrow, and that's when I'll decide. So don't jam yourself by waiting until the 11th hour.
Absolutely,
do it today.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's much cheaper than you think it is. So
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Information.
And when you consider what the cost of a severe illness or even a minor trip to the emergency room can bankrupt you.
Yes,
so
it
don't
can.
gamble with your security, your financial security, and that of your families when there's a choice waiting for you. All you got to do is sign up.
Well, we here at WHPR in Detroit, we compliment you, and we are so happy that you have come to us, and we will play this over and over and over.
Well, thank you so much, Brenda. We appreciate your support and for you caring about your listening audience and their health.
Oh, I do. So
well, you have a great day.
Yes, we'll trudge through the snow, and maybe one day it'll be spring.
Spring is right around the corner. I can feel it coming.
I heard that. Okay, thank you.
Take care, dear.
Bye-bye. So everyone, we have to sign up for healthcare.gov. We have to have some kind of health insurance, because believe me, if you don't have it, they treat you a certain way. You're really like a second-class citizen when you have an emergency. So we'll see you next time. I hate to come back and I'm talking that was a little off sync, it was like, but no, I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful interview with Valerie Jarrett. She was very, very nice, and really, we need to have health care. You need to get signed up for health care. And we're going to go on with the rest of our topics. The Northland death was the young man who died at Northland. That was ruled an accident. But it could have been prevented.
I absolutely think it could have been prevented. I mean, first of all, with attitude. The store owner said he felt threatened. And now he has police and all these other activities and security coming after him because he felt threatened. What was such a threat that they had to kill this kid? I don't know all the story. I don't know all the facts. I haven't seen all the facts. But he felt threatened.
Well, and it leaves open to interpretation. But I think that there could have been something different done on both sides. And I don't know if you've been to Northland lately, and I don't get there as much as I once did, but it's not the mall that I grew up cherishing.
No,
and so what you have is you have a small group of business owners who have still doing business there, and the patrons, a lot of times don't feel as safe as they should in there, because what you have an atmosphere that is not family friendly, in my opinion. One of the last times that I was in there, I smelled a very strong smell of marijuana smoke in the mall. And so I don't know specifically what happened that day, and hopefully more details will come out, but I do know this. I do know that business owners at times are prejudiced against young black men, but I also know that there are times when our young black men have to be smarter. And so I'm looking at it from both sides. I don't know if this young man could have just left. I don't know if he was confrontational with the security guards. I was taught that, you got to know, sometimes in life you got to know when to hold your cards, you got to know when to fold your cards. And sometimes, you have the right to do something, but it's not always to your advantage to do certain things. And so, again, the main issue here is that this young gentleman, Mackenzie, he was killed that day, or he died that day. It was ruled as an accident, but You know,
But
I
he
don't-
kept on saying, "Let me up! I can't breathe," and they did not let up on him. You know, and they could have gotten him up. Why couldn't you just stand this young man up?
And you're right. I agree with you. I've not frequented Northland nor Fairlane for that matter.
Gotta go check out Sibley shoes,
You
bro.
I'm going, but I'm just a little wary that you know this could have been my son,
Yeah.
and my son could have gone into Northland to go to Sibley's to get some shoes and
Sibley's still open?
I don't know that.
No, they're not. They're not.
To get some shoes and what we and could he have been perceived as threatening? One of my oldest son has locks. My youngest son has a Timmy or a haircut.
Right.
And so, you know, what does that threat look? Does that threat look like a Trayvon Martin walking down the street? Because that's the same thing he used. I felt threatened. Does that threaten look like those boys that are sitting in the car listening to music loud, and this person comes over to the car,
Jordan Davis affair.
right, and says, "I felt threatened," and he, you know, is hung jury on that. So, is it the fact that the skin was black that made him threatened, or I mean, what is it that's creating these threats?
You raise definitely the questions that I'm thinking about. You know, I think that what makes this different is that there were supposed to be trained personnel that responded to this, and so
And
there's a
that's how he
higher
ended up
standard
dead.
that they should be held accountable to. And quite frankly, these guys have hours and hours of policing this mall, and so this wasn't their first time probably handling the situation, so they should know proper procedure protocol on how to,
I agree.
whether it be detained or apprehend, or as the movie say, protect and serve, or observe and protect. You know, we don't know, and I don't want to go out on a limb and just, you know, say that, you know, every security officer there was out of line. I think more details will come out, but again, it raises the question that if this was a young white patron, or
Novi Mall,
yeah,
up in,
you know, or if it was a different mall, would it be perceived differently? And you know, so we'll wait and see. You know, thoughts and prayers go out to
Family,
Mr.
exactly.
Cochran's family, and we'll just have to wait and see how this plays out.
Well, I think that I've seen some things happen in Northland the last time I was there with my students that, I mean, it's ridiculous. They do have a lot of things going on out there that shouldn't be. But I just say that I think together with the force and everything, this caused this young man to die. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
Now, I heard that Judge Wade McCree has filed paperwork to run for judge again. And remember, he was kind of brought up on charges for really compromising his position as judge. Plus, he took a nude selfie of himself and it was sent to a married bailiff. There were other things that went on. He got into a personal relationship with with somebody who had, boy, what had she? Her husband was her ex-husband or something.
She was a plaintiff in front of him,
Right.
And they had entered into a personal relationship. I think that this it just gets more and more bizarre, and I don't think he's doing himself any favors. Public opinion has been almost cast, in my opinion, on this guy again. In politics, name recognition goes a long way, but I think that, you know, you wouldn't want to be the guy that lose to Wade McCree.
Right. I think he has to, in the event that he can, because they have not ruled on whether he's going to be suspended or not. So he has to do that. And I absolutely admired him. I really feel that this fall from grace for him is a tremendous fall. I've had him speak to some of my children before, and it pains me that they now recognize him in the news as, oh, that's Judge that took the selfie. I'm really praying for this.
What I thought, he acted like a man going through a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and as a society, I think that, you know, a lot of times we can be borderline hypocritical because we're all human, and if the light would shine on us at our most inopportune times, what would be our reputation? And so I'm not making any excuse for him, but what I'm saying is that people make mistakes, and we can choose to either judge them for the rest of their life based off the mistake that they made, or we can have some flexibility and see the perspective where they're at now. Again, the office of judge has a high standard for
very
that,
high standard.
and historically, you cannot make these type of mistakes and expect to get support from voters. But I think just mirroring that is, how do we view people when we catch them in the act of doing something?
Right. Well, unfortunately, this hour has gone by so quickly. I just hate how it goes by so quickly. And I'd like to thank you, Darren, for joining the table today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
mean, we really didn't get through everything. As usual, we get into this education debate, and I think this is a panel we need to have. We need to keep talking about it, because things are not as they should be. Because you got a better education, and you got a better education than a lot of the young people are getting today. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for Table Talk with Brenda Perryman. Sign up for the Affordable Care Act, and you have a good weekend. See you next week.
Let's bring the